The following is a conversation with Thomas Schueneman, an environmental journalist, sustainability advocate, and multimedia storyteller, whose work has inspired countless individuals and organizations to rethink their relationship with the planet. Thomas has spent over a decade uncovering the nuances of climate action and sustainable development, offering a powerful voice to critical issues that impact us all. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, where we explore the intersection of sports, sustainability, and storytelling. I'm your host, Sid Bensalah. Today, we'll discuss how we can reshape our world by reconnecting with nature and amplifying voices that drive change. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. I've been following your work for a while, and I'm excited to dig into your journey and insights on sustainability. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good.
Good.
Let's start with your story, Tom. What inspired you to become an advocate and journalist for environmental issues?
I have to honor my dad for this. My dad worked in environmental issues all his life for the state of Ohio as a game warden, and then later on for the federal government working with environmental impact statements. And so growing up in that environment, I remember we lived in Colorado at the time when I was younger, and we would go camping all the time and go out in nature. And I was a Boy Scout, and we went out in nature. So I think that nurture really instilled in me a awareness of our connection with nature and an appreciation for nature. And that just grew from there into my work today.
Your work spans so many topics. Was there a defining moment when you realized this was your calling?
I was actually trained as a musician. And so I worked as a musician for many years as an audio engineer. And then around in the 90s, I read a couple of books. One was, you'll forgive me if I can't remember the title,
it's
was
okay.
by Jeremy Rifkin, Hot House Earth or something like that. And then Al Gore's book, Earth and Balance. Mm-hmm. Those two books really inspired me to want to take my appreciation for the environment a step further. And so that's when I started to develop think more about climate change and the reality of climate change. And then I was always interested in writing, so in the 90s, early aughts, I developed my work today as an environmental journalist, freelance journalist, and then about 2005, I launched globalwarmingisreal.com, which is still happening today. So I think those two books and my dad, and then writing and wanting to tell a story, that all kind of coalesced in the mid-90s, early aughts. And here I am today talking to you about this.
Wow.
All these years later.
Yeah. What was the most surprising or challenging lesson you learned early in your career, Tom?
Well, I think one of the early lessons, and it's a lesson that I have to remind myself sometimes, is that you're not going to convince everybody.
No.
So you just have to first off, you can't force people to think anything. So you just have to present what your thoughts are and then hopefully guide them toward an awareness. They don't have to think the way I do, but you'd help guide them toward awareness. But the fact is, there are people that are never going to agree with you, and there are people that are going to try to draw you out. In the internet age, it's all this rancor. And I think one of the early lessons I learned, even if I'm passionate about an issue, I have to let it go at some point and let people be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And on that, storytelling seems to be at the heart of everything you do. Why do you believe it's such a powerful tool for climate action?
Well, I think we are a storytelling species. I think we organize our lives around the stories we tell. So I do believe that one of the issues with how we've gotten to where we are right now with climate change is the story that we've told ourselves that there are no limits. And that story has gotten us into a bind. So I think what I was just saying about trying to bring people to a place of awareness, people respond to stories more than being lists of facts. Facts, of course, are important. The climate science is the center of what we're doing. But I can, and I have for the past 10, 20 years, let people know the facts, but you have to wrap those facts into a story to make people respond to it and open up to it. And again, back to this idea that you can't just make people think the way you want them to think, or make them concerned about climate change if they're not. That's completely understandable. It's a huge issue and it's difficult to understand. And the way that you can get people to kind of incorporate it into their thinking and awareness and understanding is through stories. I think stories, and not just climate, just in any important complex topic and how we live in the world, it's the stories that we tell that will affect the change, I believe.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Can you walk us through a story or a project that profoundly impacted your audience?
One of the stories that has impacted me and my audience was in 2015, COP21, the climate conference where the Paris Agreement was signed. That was the moment, maybe the singular moment where I felt a sense of optimism, not just from me, but from the people around me. Because at that point, for a brief moment, it seemed like the world had come together for a common cause about climate change. And it really seemed at the time that there was a chance that the even by 2015, we were a little bit late to the party, but it seemed at the time that there was a consensus and awareness and an ambition to actually do something about climate. I'd say that would be one of the big stories. Another story that I think had a lot of impact was when I went up to Canada. This was in 2008 on an Earth Watch expedition to help scientists study permafrost in the area. And that was an impactful story because being on the ground, seeing the conditions and talking to the scientists had a big impact on me and my audience. So it was 2 weeks of an expedition, and due to travel arrangements, I stayed at the Northern Studies Center in Churchill a couple extra days. And so a polar bear, a wildlife biologist, was coming in to do some research. I had an opportunity to speak with him for a little bit. And I remember we were talking about the polar bear populations. And of course, the polar bear is kind of the iconic symbol of climate change. Yeah. And he's studying the polar bear. And he told me that he considered himself a historian, in that, studying the polar bear populations in their decline, he was watching history, I guess. It was kind of a profound statement from him. It's a wildlife biologist, and he obviously loves his work and loves the animals that he studies, and he considered himself not a wildlife biologist as much as a historian, because of the impact of climate and ecosystem degradation on the populations that he was studying. So that was another impactful story.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Tom. Climate change is a hotly debated topic, especially regarding its causes. How do you navigate these debates while staying true to the science?
So I navigate the debates by following the science and understanding that, of course, climate, and we'll hear this in many of the, I don't want to say skeptical, because skeptical, and people that don't really think climate change is that much of an issue, they'll say climate has always been changing. And this, of course, is true, So what I try to talk about is the rate of change and the interruption of the carbon cycle that humans have caused, since we're digging up the carbon out of the earth and burning it in the atmosphere. So that's the profound change in the carbon cycle. And so basically, as far as navigating the causes of climate change, So I just went through kind of the scientific, what's happening. We're interrupting the carbon cycle, and we're changing the chemistry of the oceans, the chemistry of the atmosphere. It gets farther back than that. Is why are we doing that? We're doing that, to put gas in the car and to live a modern life. So what we're facing now, which is why there's so much, I believe, so much resistance to climate change. Either in people can, I can sit here and talk about how climate change is real all day long, but that doesn't change anything. And then there's the people that don't think it's a problem at all. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that we're all kind of embedded in this ecosystem, this way of life that is totally dependent on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And the challenge that we face is how do we pull ourselves out of that without, I'm not advocating that people live in a cave. People used to say that to me all the time. That's not what I'm advocating at all. We want to live comfortable and lives thriving. And to do that, we have to find another way to power our civilization.
Yeah. You spoke about skeptics, or let's say people who feel disconnected from environmental issues.
Yes.
And deniers,
Yeah,
but what
deniers.
is clear, and I fully agree with you, that everyone agreed that the climate has been changing all the time.
Right.
It's quite clear with everyone. But what certain people, they don't believe that the cause of climate changes, the root cause, it's a human activity. And here where it get, put it this way, it get heated, And
Yeah.
I've been talking to so many people, and we spoke during our intro chat, Thomas, about what everyone cares about, to simplify it, that everyone champion and cares about having clean air, clean water, and clean soil from where our food comes from,
Right. Right.
And I came to a point where we made this topic so complicated, so complex to understand, and complexity equal expensive. In let's say this is the perception where
Right.
the majority, and then they say, hang on, okay, if I need to shift my combustion engine vehicle to an electric vehicle, how much is going to cost me this story,
Right.
if I need
Right.
to, let's say, turn vegan as an example, how much is going to cost me this shift? If I need to upgrade my apartment or my house with renewable, for example, installing solar panels, etc., how much is going to cost me this? So there is the cost issue, number one.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
number two, where the majority cannot afford, it's a reality. And number two
Yeah.
as well, or let's say all the time, we've been politicizing sustainability, climate change at a point where the majority, they are fed up,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I fully agree with you. I was not at COP21, but I watched on television the moment where all nations under the UN, they came together and they made a pledge, they made a promise, they signed that famous Paris climate agreement, and we all thought for a couple of weeks, couple of months, probably for 2 years, that, wow, we know that there is a problem. Everyone is coming together to basically work as one and to find solution. I don't want to make this story because we can talk about this for days. I'm just trying to understand from your point of view, from a journalistic point, how do you tailor narratives to reach, let's say, skeptics or people who feel disconnected from environmental issues, Thomas?
I think you try to make it as personal as possible. You were talking about cost. Of course, that's what people are concerned of. That's the daily bread.
Yeah.
So you make it personal. It is it's very confusing. It seems like it's going to cost money. What I tried to say is that there's no easy answer here. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There's no easy way out of this. But I think you try to appeal to people's families, their futures. Because we're at a point now where it's not something that's way out into the future. It's here. It's right here. I don't want to. Well, I was going to say I don't want to bring it up. Just as I bring it up, the fires in Los Angeles down the coast from where I am right now. These are the things that are going to, and in Europe, the floods, the hurricane, just the extreme weather is not, again, it's like climate change. It's not like all of a sudden there's a hurricane where there's never been hurricanes before. It's, the fact is that we're moving into a more challenging world. And as much as we want to be skeptical of, and unfortunately climate change has become so politicized that if you do talk about climate change in the United States anyway, you're automatically categorized in a certain way. You're this kind of person if you care about climate change. Obviously, you're a Democrat and liberal. You can't be a conservative and care about climate change. It's that dichotomy that I try to break through to, that this is it's global warming. It's a common issue that is going to impact all of us, whether we like it or not. It's going to impact every one of us.
I think the biggest mistake is to politicize this issue and to make it complicated and to point a finger at who's to blame, or putting the blame on a category of people, political party, left or right, But what is fascinating, that everybody wants, once again, clear water, clean air, clean soil.
That's right. That's right. And that's a good place to start.
Absolutely. I think the mistake we made, let's use as an example the EV vehicles,
Okay.
EV vehicles being introduced. Okay, maybe Tesla, maybe Elon, he led the movement, from a business point of view, and he did really good, where all the major car manufacturers, they didn't believe. They thought that he will last maybe 1 year, maximum 2 years, and then he will give up. But then when most of the countries started to push to electrify the vehicles for the sake of slashing CO2 emissions, they did not think about how much is going to cost the whole thing, how much is going to cost the end users.
Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of issues with EVs right now, and a lot of these things are like the charging and the expense. And the other thing is rare earth minerals that are required for the lithium-ion batteries.
Yeah.
That's a real serious issue. I did some work a couple of years ago, I guess it was now, a company called Aqua Metals, and their mission is to scale up recycling of lithium-ion batteries. Without the recycling, it's basically going to create another problem, another huge environmental problem.
And it happened couple of weeks in LA during the fire. I read an article about the fire department. They had no idea how to contain all the electric vehicles
that's true.
Burned to the ground in LA fires.
Right. Yeah. And to that, speaking to that, just across the Bay, I'm in the Monterey Bay Area, little about 100 miles south of San Francisco, and there is a big, huge energy storage plant, which is just basically enormous banks of lithium-ion batteries. And there's a fire, and a big major fire, and this has created some air issues in the region. So it's definitely a serious issue. And I take your point that maybe the way that EVs have been rolled out or being rolled out wasn't thought out. All the issues you brought up, the lithium-ion batteries, the rare earth minerals, it might have been made more. It's kind of, well, here we are now. It's the way it is. If you had said, as you said, if we had created internal combustion engines much more efficiently, and California is one state that really has tried to do that, and a lot of pushback from, especially now. Now as we have a new president, that's going to be a big issue. There's going to be a lot of pushback for things like that. So, but I've always kind of wondered why just less waste. Why there seems to be an issue with making cars more efficient or just being more efficient with your energy use. It's low-hanging fruit, I think, that would make a big difference. I think EVs, eventually, I do think I can't give you. It's going to be decades before it's predominantly EVs. I think it is going in that direction, as is renewable energy. The train is kind of out of the station. We're heading in that direction, but it's how we roll this out. And the fact is, driving a highly efficient internal combustion engine could be just as environmentally friendly as an EV. An EV, it depends on how the energy source that's recharging the batteries, if it's being recharged by a natural gas plant, if the grid where the car is located, natural gas or coal, God forbid, that kind of negates the whole thing. So there are a lot of issues with the EVs. And the other thing about EVs is that if it's being touted as some sort of a silver bullet, I have an electric vehicle, I'm good. I'm taking care of climate change. Well, that's unfortunately, it's just not that simple. There is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
So,
We spoke about COP. We spoke about the Paris Agreement in 2015. Yeah. We spoke about the people that believe, yes, climate is changing, but maybe it's not the human activity that is the problem, We spoke about the probably some kind of misinformation, making sustainability and environmental issues complicated to understand. How can governments and organizations better align their efforts for a real change, Thomas?
So to answer your question, I'll say this. I think a lot of the problem is that we as consumers have been told that we have to, how do I put this? I guess it's our fault. We have to do something. So I think for governments and organizations to align with more sustainability efforts, I think it gets down in a lot of sense to the money. Politics in the United States anyway is fueled by money. And the money right now is in a large sense in the fossil fuel industry and the plastics and the things that, even if we're not concerned about climate, plastics, fossil fuels create problems with the air and the water, the clean air and the clean water that we all want. So I think governments and organizations have to realign their financial incentives, essentially, toward a more sustainable mindset, to not be so influenced by the huge sums of money that pour into governments to do their bidding. I think that's a real big problem right now in government, is that the incentives just aren't there to do what's the right thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, there is no a silver bullet, actually, and
no, there is not.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. It's people, it's natural, human nature. They want to find a simple answer. They want to find the thing that's going to solve the problem, whatever that problem might be. And I'm reading a book right now called Hyperobjects, and the idea is that there are things like climate change that are so large that it just gets beyond the human capacity to really understand it. And I think that's where we're at right now with climate change and environmental issues, because it's hard to grasp the climate, the global climate, when you're just sitting here in your chair trying to get through the day, trying to feed your family, and then the climate is changing. So it's really, really hard to take that in when you're just trying to get through the day.
Yeah. There is another topic about companies. Let's say corporate accountability is kind of a big issue.
Yeah.
And to address that issue, my question is to you, Tom, how do we encourage companies to lead the way, even when the regulations and policies are more kind of, I mean, there is a lot of framework, there is guidelines about the environment, about best practices and things like that, but there is no tough regulations and policies where, in case you don't commit with what you
Yeah.
pledge or what you promise to
Right.
do, then
Yeah.
nothing will happen to you.
Yeah. Greenwashing is a big issue. Um, I again, it gets down to financial incentives. A good, well-meaning company will have a triple bottom line. They'll consider, obviously, if you're in business, you have to make a profit, or else you're not going to be in business. Okay, so that's obviously important. But then companies, especially large companies that impact millions of people and the environments they live in, have a social license to operate, or at least they should have a social license to operate. So it should be people, planet, and profit. Those should be the main concerns. That should be the accounting for a company.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as consumers, again, we do have power in the marketplace. So we can let companies know what we're concerned with by where we put our money is one thing. It seems like, my not buying something because of what that company does is not going to make any difference. But if enough people do it, it can drive the market. I mean, EVs could be an example. For a long time, nobody was buying EVs. Now EVs are starting, at least in the U.S., are starting to gain a foothold in the marketplace. And so that is creating the market to continue.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's ways that the consumer, if a lot of people, a lot of the companies are going to say, there was was the CEO of Exxon.
Mm-hmm.
He actually said that it's you guys are the ones using the oil, so don't blame us. So, I mean, unfortunately, we can't stop using oil. I mean, even if we tried, even if you didn't drive a car. So I think that would be one way, just to try first off to use companies to support companies that do have an honest. That's the thing, an honest environmental policy that goes with that triple bottom line. Now, again, it's the problem, like as you mentioned, the problem is companies will talk up a great storm. They have whole PR departments for that.
Yeah.
They can say one thing and do another.
Yeah.
So that's where the regulations, some sort of regulation to be honest with your reporting, is very important.
Yeah. Thomas, you've got some exciting projects in the works. What inspired your upcoming documentary, The Story of Packaging?
The story of packaging, that actually got inspired back in the pandemic when everything was coming to us via a package.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me to thinking back when I was a lad in the 60s in Denver, and how it was a different world. And this packaging, the thing about packaging, I'd have a package show up, and it was a little tchotchke thing, whatever I ordered.
Mm-hmm.
And it was bubble wrapped, and it was in a box. The box was in a bigger box, and this is just a lot of waste. So a videographer friend of mine, and I, we just came up with this idea, the story of packaging, and how we have, in just really not that much time. The pandemic accelerated it, but it was heading this way before that. This packaging economy that we're in, everything comes in a package, and I think the pandemic is what inspired that.
Yeah. Your book, Finding Home in the Anthropocene,
Anthropocene.
Sounds fascinating. Yeah. What message do you hope it conveys, Tom?
I hope what I'm trying to do with that, and it's a work in progress, is that we accept where we're at. You can't solve a problem until you acknowledge there is a problem. So I think that's the first thing, is that we have a problem. We're in a problem. And though we're not officially in a new epoch, geological, we're not in the Anthropocene in that sense, but I do believe that we're in the Anthropocene in the sense that we have altered Earth systems to the point where our activities are impacting the environment and will impact the future environment. So we're in the Anthropocene, and what we need to do now is to learn to adapt ourselves to the situation that we're in. So learning to live in the Anthropocene is acknowledging that we have a problem, that it's going to be difficult, but there is hope at the end of the tunnel. If we learn to adapt to the situation we're in, we can get through this and thrive in the coming century. Yeah. That's the message.
Yeah. What impact do you hope these projects will have on the broader conversation about sustainability?
I'm hoping that we can turn down the heat a little bit in the contentiousness of this. That's the main message, is that it is not an us versus them, a liberal versus conservative. It is the human project. And we can have our differences of opinion about all the other stuff, but we all have to live in the same world. And, it's undeniable that there are issues with, if you don't want to talk about climate change, the clean air and the clean water. We can always get back to that. And so I'm just hoping that we can let go of the polarization. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're heading in that direction right now, but the more that we can just learn to talk about things, talk with people, if we can talk together instead of talking at each other. Nobody's listening. When you talk at somebody, that kind of gets back to one of the lessons I learned. When you try to talk at somebody, talk at them, you're not going to get through to them. You have to talk with them. You have to listen to them. And people aren't listening. Yeah. And I just think it gets down to human decency in a way. And hopefully we can learn to grapple with these huge issues and leave our lizard brain behind a little bit with that. If that makes sense. Yeah.
You and I previously we spoke about that humanity has lost touch with nature.
Yeah.
Why is this connection so vital for our survival?
Well, I think it's vital for our survival because we are within nature. We are embedded in nature. It gets part of like learning to live in the Anthropocene. So we have changed our relationship with nature via our activities, fossil fuels, whatever. Just the consumerist and extractive economies that we have created. Our connection with nature, first off, I think our mental and emotional well-being is much better. It doesn't mean that we have to be, out in the rough, wild, but just going out into nature, walking outside. I'm fortunate enough that I live in a beautiful area, so I don't have to go far to just sit and watch the ocean. And I'm very fortunate in that, and I'm grateful. But even if it's just a city park, I had an experience about 10 years ago where I was, and I'll share this with the audience. I was having a depressive episode. I was in depression. And one of the things that got me through that was just going a daily walk. I was in San Francisco at the time, going to a park and sitting in the park and smelling the grass and being in the trees. I think that connection to nature is we've lost that in the sense that we think we can live apart from it 100%, and it's just it is part of the reason why we're in the situation we're in, where we just kind of have ignored the impact of our activities, and in that process just getting further and further away from the nature in which we are embedded, which we are part of. We are nature in a way.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's getting kind of philosophical, but I just think that we remind ourselves from whence we came and from whence we go. That will make our current situation better. And the more we can connect with nature, the more that we can, I think, come together and talk to people about these issues, and then have a substantive response to it. I think the farther away we get from our connection with nature, the worse we're going to be. And
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important.
Well said. Fully agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
As we look to the future, what gives you hope for the next generation, let's say, of climate advocates?
You know what gives me hope is the young people that are the generation coming up, their passion for sustainability, for a better world. In the United States, there's some youth climate. In Montana, there was a youth climate bill that was brought on behalf of I can't remember, it was a dozen or so young people. Brought this suit against the state of Montana because of the state's environmental policies, and their claim was that they had a right to a livable environment, and they won. It was kind of a landmark case.
Was it recently?
Yeah, it was just last year. I
Last
can't.
year.
That was when it was decided. Montana. I should know Montana. Well, Montana Youth Climate Bill. We'll bring it up. I'm apologies for not knowing the.
No,
actual,
it's okay. I will check it out. Okay.
But those kind of things, and that sort of approach from young people, like challenging governments and business. Governments specifically with lawsuits and prevailing, that sort of thing gives me hope. That's the kind of thing that might start to shift the incentives, the status quo that we're talking about. That's so immovable. It seems so immovable. That's the thing. It seems immovable right now, but things happen. Things can change.
Yeah.
On a dime.
Yeah.
I mean, the pandemic was an example of that.
Yeah. How do you see the role of storytelling evolving in this space?
Well, I think technology is a big thing. We're doing this right now. You're in Europe. I'm in the United States. I think that's one good thing. I think the reach, the creativity of people and the tools that are available to them to craft messages that can impact people. Me being a musician, like for instance, musicians that can inspire people to think about, they can wrap their music around, for instance, this is an example, around a message of climate. I just think storytelling can evolve in a myriad different ways. Storytelling can evolve depending on the storyteller. And that's the exciting thing about storytelling is people, their creativity and how they bring their perception of the world to the world.
Thomas, if you could leave our audience with one actionable takeaway, what would it be?
I think it would be small, simple steps. Say taking a walk instead of driving, just a little step, while in the vastness of everything, it might seem insignificant, but even what might seem insignificant is significant if enough of us do it. I just think stay true to your values. You want your family to have a good future. You want to breathe clean air. You want to drink clean water. So just try not to be overwhelmed by the scope of it. That's my job. My job is to think about, oh my God, this is so big. How are we going to do this? And to try to create a story around it. I think individuals just stay true to your values, and one small step. What is it? Neil Armstrong. One small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Just take that small step. That would be my takeaway.
Thanks for sharing. Now it's time for our lightning round, Thomas. You ready for speedy Q&A?
Sure I am.
Let's do this.
Okay.
What's your favorite book about climate or nature?
My favorite book about climate or nature would be Al Gore's book. I think Al Gore's, because that was what inspired me, Earth in the Balance.
Mm-hmm. Who has been your greatest influence in your advocacy work?
My greatest influence in my advocacy work has been, that's a hard question to answer. There are so many excellent influences. I would say, can I pass on that? Can I just say there's not one person. There's so many excellent scientists and advocates doing good work, and they all inspire me to do what I'm doing now.
Good. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Yeah, coffee.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
If I could live anywhere in the world, as I mentioned, I'm fortunate to be where I am right now. Mm-hmm. I'll say, I've only spent a week or so where you are, but I was very impressed with Stockholm. I don't know if I want to be there right now in the winter, though. So
depends. I don't mind. I love it.
Yeah. I love being where I'm at on the coast. I've been. I grew up in the mountains. Mm-hmm. I've been on the ocean since forever, since 30, 40 years. So I'd say the mountains of the ocean.
Yeah. I must say, summertime here, the archipelago in Sweden, it's heaven.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there in September.
September is good. Yeah, it is.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
What's a new hobby you've picked up recently?
Photography. I've always liked taking pictures, but I just started taking a course in photography, and specifically iPhone photography. Mm-hmm. And there's a myriad of opportunities for photography here. So photography would be.
Yeah. Good. Name a documentary everyone should watch.
A documentary everyone should watch. Well, I don't want to. There's a documentary. Oh man, it's about the consumption. Mm-hmm. And I'm so sorry that I can't think of the title. I just watched it a few months ago. But it's a documentary. It details our consumer habits but it takes it to a scale. It gives us the number, how many, for instance, Amazon deliveries there are in a single day, and how much meat is processed, and it's staggering the amount of material that we're consuming. Yeah. And I'm really sorry I can't think of that.
It's okay. Was it on Netflix or?
It was on Netflix.
How do you unwind after a long day or a long week?
I unwind by reading a book, mm-hmm. just sitting in a chair and reading. I'm an avid reader, so I think my big moment of relaxation at the end of the day is reading, mm-hmm. or maybe listening to some music.
If you could interview anyone, dead or alive, who will it be?
Dead or alive? Okay, so what popped into my head, and because I just finished a book about him, Abraham Lincoln.
Fantastic.
Why not? Yeah. I mean, why not? It'd be very interesting to talk with him, and that was as troubling as the times are now in America. The Civil War was I think without a doubt the most challenging period of American history. So it'd be interesting to speak with him.
Yeah. In one word, what does sustainability mean to you? Mm-hmm. What's your mantra or a quote you live by?
The golden rule: treat others how you'd like to be treated.
Excellent.
I think that's a good way to approach life.
Great. Thomas Schueneman, thank you very, very much. It has been a pleasure having you on the show today.
Oh, this has been great. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
It's been a great conversation.
And to our listeners, I leave you with a quote that resonates with today's conversation from Carl Sagan. He's an American astronomer, astrophysicist, cosmologist, author, and science communicator. Once said, "Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known." Let's keep exploring, learning, and advocating for sustainable future. Thank you for listening to the Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our show. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep making a difference. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.